So let me just say welcome to this debate organized by the BCA to settle a question that has been vexing the English-speaking world since the colonization of America 400 years ago, when apparently our dialects began to diverge. The British wonder why the Americans take such liberties with the English language. Americans often simply wonder what on earth the British are saying. So the subject of the debate is, as it's up there, which language version is superior, British English versus American English. The organizers were unable to agree on how to frame the question. So some said it should be, which is better, beautiful, educated, historically correct British English? Or, guess what? Flat, unprepossessing, decadent American English. Now, as you can imagine, that was not a unanimous decision. So there was another version which is better, practical, dynamic American English, or pedantic, punctilious, pretentious British English. So you see, we're already moving into kind of troubled waters here. And to determine which one should be cast aside. Because if we're going to take the trouble of deciding which one's better, well, that presumably means we'll get rid of one of them, right? Now, is it going to be British English or is it going to be American English? And that, the one that is cast aside, the one that remains, would be adopted by all of us throughout the English-speaking world. Can you imagine that? Two distinguished debaters who will defend British English, namely Caroline de Micheli and Glynis Thomas. On the American side, we have also two distinguished debaters, namely Lawrence Maguire and Emily Duprat. We also have some distinguished reciters, and their job is going to be to let us hear what is the correct pronunciation of all the words we're going to be looking at. And for that, we have on the British side Valerie Smith for the British words and Geoffrey Bowman for the American words. When we come to those words, I will invite the debaters to give their explanation as to why the respective country version is better, and why the other, or they might want to do it inversely and say why the other country's version is inferior. Okay? The British and Americans disagree on so many expressions that we can wonder how they can communicate at all, actually. Our list could have gone on almost indefinitely. To judge this debate, because if we're going to have a debate, we have to decide who's the winner and who's the loser. And we have a panel. Let's over here. We're supposed to have a distinguished panel.
He looks very American.
Well, yeah, who organized?
The organizers of this event were under a very tight budget. And they originally thought they would have some distinguished lexicographers, linguists, and language specialists to judge this historic debate. But they couldn't afford them, and so they've taken this less expensive, not to say cheap, approach by having me. And not only am I here free, but I'm paying BCA to have the honor of doing this.
But how do I know you're a panel?
It says I'm a panel.
Okay. Just because it says he's a panel, okay.
Yes.
And how do we know that this panel will be fair and square?
This panel is fair. And this panel is square. You can see. And incidentally, this square comes from the British Royal Mail, and there is nothing squarer than the British Royal Mail.
Well, that seems all in good order. I guess we should just have to go ahead with this. But you know, there's something, we need an unbiased, impartial panel, and yet there's something bothering me. I don't know what it is.
It's not balanced.
Your shoes? Something that seems to me to impair your impartiality.
Impair mine.
Oh, that's it.
What?
The hat.
The hat? What's wrong with the hat?
But it's not impartial.
Oh. We changed the hat.
Well, that is much better, definitely an improvement. But somehow, I don't think the question of impartiality has really been resolved.
Not so?
Maybe removing the bowler hat would do it.
Keep your hat on.
Impartial.
Okay. Okay, fine, that looks good. It says it's impartial, so it must be. I mean, nobody can object, right? No, no. So the problem of impartiality is solved. Just shows that if you are persistent, you can solve the most difficult problems. Yeah, it's a good lesson for us. So I think you're assured that the panel question is fairly and squarely solved. Right, the rules of the debate provide that after each word or expression is debated, I will turn to our panel, if you can call it that, to judge which side won the particular debate after each of the read words, okay? And then at the end, the panel will reveal the final score, and we will find out which is superior, British English or American English. And it will have nothing to do with feelings or patriotic nonsense. It will be fair and square and impartial. So I think it is fair to start with the American reciter, and let's get our first list of words.
Potato chips.
Crisps.
And now,
I would say that potato chips is a very obvious word. They come from potatoes, they are made of potatoes, and they are chips, small pieces of something that are cut or chopped up. You wouldn't say wood crisps, would you?
The word crisps, right?
We've got uppity British
As for example, if
accents.
you're asking for the section in the supermarket, where is the crisps section? Can anybody do that? Anybody want to try? Crisps, right? Why would you have a word that's so difficult to pronounce for such a common food item? It just shows, in my opinion, the problem with Brexit.
can you speak
However,
up? Yeah.
potato chips for us are something else. Whereas crisps, okay, whereas crisps they talk about what they're actually like. They are crisp. You can crunch on them. So even if you have difficulty when you go to the supermarket looking for the crisps section, nevertheless, there's a good description of the goods. And I remember in the old days when I started eating crisps, they were unsalted in a bag with little salt in little wax blue bags.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a good memory from my younger days.
Crisps are not now limited to potatoes. You can have parsnip crisps and beetroot crisps and all kinds of root vegetable crisps. I am quite surprised that somebody American hasn't discovered the wide variety of crisps that now exist. I would also like to add that crisps gives you the sound that is made when you have a big mouthful. And admittedly, in a cinema, it can be quite irritating, but nowhere as irritating as a mouthful of popcorn.
We call them rubbers. Rubbers are short.
Oh, really?
But you see, we have a very clear alternative in the word eraser. We know what's what. As for Wellingtons, can I only say hero worship? Do you not hear that? And rubber boots is such a practical word. We're talking about rubber. That's what it is. It's made out of rubber. It's straightforward and simple.
Well, this shows the British still have an aristocracy. And it's It's in the language and they can't get away from it. They can't even cut off the head of their queen, right? Why not? Okay, so they have a House of Lords. A House of Lords. They give people the name of Sir this, Sir Mick Jagger or something, right? So the British have a hierarchical society that they cannot escape from, and part of the reason is because of their language, right? Who still has an aristocracy in a democratic world?
I'd like to add a historical note that the British actually executed and cut the head off their king long before the French did. Charles I lost his head.
I would also like to point out, if we're trying to be absolutely accurate here, that very rarely nowadays are rubber boots actually made of rubber, because we are no longer depleting these natural resources. But the fact that the Americans continue to call them rubber boots is another example of, like their president, total disregard for the welfare of the planet.
So you'd prefer that the boots be made of plastic, is that right? Yeah.
Sausage.
Banger. Why are they called bangers? Apparently, during the war, they put a lot of water into sausages, so when they were cooked, they exploded. But it's obvious that the British, it's obviously the British like this word because they've retained it ever since.
American food is so much higher quality.
No cheap sausages!
We had the word of, taking a nap, taking a kip. Okay? And after a big feast of kippers, all you want to do is kip.
Kippers are eaten for breakfast by the upper class and for supper by the working class. So whenever you eat your fish, you can see which class you fall in.
We've gone through the list. And so now I need to turn to this thing called a panel. So I think I have to just ask him, what is the verdict? What is the score, Mr. Panel?
I don't want to leave everybody in suspense like this, but I was going to complain. They have beautiful tables to sit at, and you gave me this broken down art table for the panel. If I complain on there, you're going to make me pay twice as much.
That's right. Yeah.
And I've already been, people have been trying to bribe me already.
Is that right? Yeah.
So you can see this is a historically and big estate. Now, I have run this through 2 calculators. It is completely scientific, and I come up with, I forgot to write this down. No,
Well, what kind of panel is that?
It's the kind of panel you're paying for. I came up with 5 wins on the American side. Wait a minute, 5 wins on the British side.
What about my 20 cents?
The rest,
My 20 cents.
No hecklers.
she's going to go in for a court of law, you know.
I think so.
trying to bribe this.
She's a good lawyer.
Well, we can either
I had-
find her a lawyer or a solicitor.
I have 5 wins on the American side, 5 wins on the British side, and the rest were tied. Chair, we have a tie.
Says the debate is tied. Neither British English nor American English is superior one to the other. Well, I think we're going to have to live with that.
Well, if I may point something out, he used the word tie, which is an American word.
Well, I don't have my dictionary. I don't have my dictionary with me right now to check that. Anyway, I would like to thank our debaters and our panel for your contributions. I wish to thank Philippe Marchand for his invaluable contributions, as always, to the conception and organization of this event. In doing research for it, Philippe uncovered this quotation from the first great compiler of an English dictionary, whom we all know was...
Webster.
No, Samuel Johnson. before America was even invented. Well, not quite.
I think it was a little after.
Yeah. He had a strong sense of the mutability of language. And in the preface to his dictionary, Johnson wrote, "It must be remembered," Samuel Johnson, by the way, yeah. "It must be remembered that while our language is yet living and variable by caprice of everyone that speaks it, these words are hourly shifting their relations and can no more be ascertained in a dictionary than a tree grove in the agitation of a storm can accurately be delineated from its reflection in the water." That's powerful stuff in terms of what we know about linguistics and development of language. And he said that way back in the 1600s, right? So his metaphor of words likened to trees by a storm reflected in the water has been referred to as a noble expression of the democratic allowance for linguistic variation. And so we said at the beginning that we were going to choose only one language and we were going to impose it on everybody else. Well, we're not going to do that. Because nobody won. Sorry?
We have no academy.
No.
No.
You resisted that idea.
Yeah. Well, there we are. I would like to say something which hasn't been said, which is that this whole debate was the brainchild of our panel over there. He invented this whole story. So a big round of applause. Thank you, Art. Yeah, it was good fun. I hope you enjoyed it. It was good fun. It's not over yet, because now we're going to sing.
Oh.
It's time to sing.